Hey everyone, my name is Paul Graham, and this is the Investor's Guide to Joy. Today, I'm going to interview John Hewitt, who I had the pleasure to get to know and speak about a number of things, including what he says to people about how his day's going, how he survives and thrives really in the day-to-day, dreaming big, owning your weakness, and talking about if everyone can be an entrepreneur. We also talked through how he's overcome a numerous amount of barriers in his life and his experience of being a CEO for over 42 years. It's incredible to be able to talk to an individual who's as insightful and as well decorated as he is, especially considering the success he's had of creating several nine-figure businesses. Hope you enjoy this one. Hit it on repeat. All right, hey everyone, welcome back to the Investor's Guide to Joy. So I have an exciting guest, John Hewitt, on today, who's had a number of years of experiences as well as a number of different business ventures that I think is going to be fascinating to really uncover, how he's really maybe planned out some of these endeavors and also how some of these endeavors have just kind of came to be. So John, thanks for being on here today. Excited to hear more from you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. One thing that really stood out to me was how we, initially started our conversation. It was, hey, how are you doing, right? And you mentioned incredible as always. You shared a story of going to Dunkin Donuts, I believe it was, and you're, being called like Mr. Incredible. Curious, like, how did that initially start? Why the word incredible instead of amazing? Curious what that process has been like for you.
It's been a different word throughout the years. It used to be great 25 years ago, and then one of my friends' fiancés used to say in a very husky, sexy voice, she'd say amazing. So I switched to amazing for a while, and now I'm incredible. And it's a normal hello is how you doing instead of hi. And so I'm always just annoyed when people say good. So whenever anyone says good to me, I say, how are you doing? And they say good. I say, well, I hope it gets even better.
What have you found in those like interactions? So when I've had the opportunity in those moments to say like, I'm doing incredible, amazing, fantastic things like could not be better. I'm so grateful. Like those sort of feelings, intentions, emotion, and like just pizzazz essentially. Some people definitely latch onto it and are curious. Other people might be like offended or like standoffish. Like what have you had in terms of experiences for doing this so long?
The normal experience I have is like you described at Dunkin Donuts. I go to the same Dunkin Donuts and every morning, virtually every morning. And now for the last 3 weeks, they say, good morning, Mr. Incredible. And the normal response is, I love that. When I say, how you doing? And I say incredible. And they say, I love that they're not used to that. They're used to mundane interactions where people are very impersonal and boring, I think. I'm sure if you're at a drive-through, you don't have a lot of fun interactions. And so I think it's a little unique and fun for them.
Sure, you bet. How have you experienced like the opposite, where someone might be like standoffish or, they're just in a different mindset. They're not having a great, incredible, good, day or maybe even like season of life. And they hear something like that and they're just, repelled by it. What have you found those interactions like?
I have one favorite situation, when I was at, my last company, public company, worth $500 million. And when someone leaves, they always do an exit interview. And I loved it in the exit interview. One of the people complained that they had to be great every day. They couldn't be just good. They complained that I would say that to them, that I would say, I hope it gets even better. They complained like they thought they had to lie and say they were great, even if they were just good. When I'm sincere,
Mm-hmm.
if you tell me you're good, I want you to get better. I mean, our mission statement, I love our mission statement, is having fun, improving lives.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I found through these sort of like words or actions, it's like a form of leadership, right? And I've seen this in a variety of different fashions with words or actions or intentions, even as simple as, hey, like let's go grab a beer, and you're sitting down and you're like, hey, I'm actually going to get a soda water or Coke or something like that, and then the other person, most likely follows very, very similar type suits, right? Or doing kind of that random act of kindness, really kind of sets the tone, and it's, a form of leadership. How have you really found that other people have like attached onto it? Have you seen that as you've interacted, for example, with these people at Dunkin Donuts or in your companies, that they've then taken and embodied the similar thought process, and they're becoming, a similar version to yourself, where they no longer say, oh, I'm doing like okay or good, or yeah, it's a good day, but they're now, more excited and energized when they're saying like, yeah, I'm having a great day, right? Like that level of emotion is different. Have you seen like you really just give that almost gift like to other people and see how other people have changed too? Or has it just been when you've shared it and they just like receive it, but not necessarily do it themselves?
Well, it's good news, bad news. And I'll give you the bad news first. I believe that culture is a huge asset in a company. And the greatest companies, the few great companies in this world, in this country, have great culture. And that starts with having people with the right attitude. You have to have people with the right attitude. So the bad news is I've tried to change. I've had many people that had a poor attitude, and I made the mistake of trying to change them. And while I could change them for an hour or a day or a week or a month, they pop right back into that bad attitude. So in a way, it does change the culture, because the people with the bad attitude don't stay. They realize they don't fit in. And so although I've been unlikely to change people with poor attitudes, bad attitudes, I've been able to limit them as a toxic environment on the other people. And so I've been blessed with incredible, great futures, and that's why, or great cultures, and that's why they call my company Loyalty Brands. Because in my new company that I started 6 years ago, I have over 15 people that have been with me 25 years or more.
Wow. What words do those people say? Like, are they maybe great, incredible, amazing? Like, can you think of a few?
Yeah, they're those fantastic. I mean, the most common are fantastic, amazing, and because people don't like to copy me, so the favorite words they tend to use are amazing and fantastic.
Okay, awesome.
Some of them do try to top me.
That's top you. How so? Just like a longer word, or say it with more passion, or
that they're even doing better than me.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a phone call or some situation where it's like, I love you. No, I love you more. No, I love you infinitely more. And it's just like that kind of like math game. And like, who knows math a little bit better, of I love you infinitely to the power of infinity type thing. But I think it's a really good testament and also intention to say that is then the culture and the experience that you have with people, that they're looking to be constantly, more positive, and that's their focus. It's not just, on their like current present self. They're looking to go beyond their self and be, even better, right? And that sort of growth mindedness and action, certainly I would think translates into their own actions in a day in day basis. Like, have you seen that where like the people, as they change maybe their, mindset or the words they're using for how their day's going, then are maybe more productive or more intentional or more strategic or things like that? Like, have you seen that sort of shift within people?
Sure. When they tease like that, it shows they're having fun. And almost everyone I know gets caught up in the day-to-day and the minutia and fighting fires. And we don't sit back and appreciate and be grateful for all the blessings we've had. My theory is, if you're alive and healthy in the United States, you're one of the 2% most fortunate people on the planet. But when you get in a work environment, especially when you're supporting franchisees and customers and other employees, you get wrapped up in problem after problem after problem. And so it forces a little sidetrack like that, forces you to think, now I need to be grateful. I need to start with that grateful attitude.
Is that tactical to say that, it's like a gratitude practice where you're doing like 3, a day? Or is it more a presence of just as people are asking, how you're doing? Or is it both?
It's certainly both, but it's meant, if you're going to have a great culture, it starts at the top. So it's meant I never have a bad day. You can't catch me in a bad mood. That I never have a bad day. I shouldn't say you can't catch me in a bad mood. I can have a bad moment, but at the end of the day, I wake up happy every morning. I go to sleep happy every night. And sure, I get lots of aggravations in the middle, but I'm a very, very content, happy, satisfied person. And as a leader, you need to show that and demonstrate that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's then, to your point, like an amazing piece of a leader, because then I, as either, another executive or a manager or an individual contributor, maybe intern, strategic partner or something like that, right? I can then go to you not only as, a business related type, interest or conversation, but also just as another human. Like, hey, I might not be having a good day. Like, I wonder what, John's doing, and I want to talk about business, but I really just want to be around him, right? And so really that presence and aura that you have is not only like attractive, but it's also like a catalyst to then, really just have people be around you, which is, to your point, then really about culture for sure.
To turn this off, but you're right. I try to have everyone leave my presence or my conversation with a positive attitude.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's conscious. I want them to, when they come in my office, to leave my office even happier than they left, than when they arrived.
You mentioned like how to get out of the day-to-day. Like, is that a tactical type thing of maybe the gratitude practice or intentions, get you out of that? Because that's one thing that I found over the course of my experience of like being an entrepreneur, being in corporate, is that sometimes those, day-to-day moments really just are, dragging for whatever reason. Has there been ways that you yourself have gotten out of that mindset of just being the monotonous day-to-day and just change your mindset, as well as you've seen others do that as well?
I do. It's a, one of my executives came to me about 20 years ago, and he said, last night I had an epiphany. And he said, you're always trying to get us to think outside the box. And then we pop right back in the box. He said, last night I realized you're never in the box. And so I'm always thinking outside the box. So I'm one of the most challenging people you will ever meet in your life. And I've always been that way. So when I was in middle school and high school, my teachers hated me. I mean, they just despised me. Some of them, they disliked my presence. My German teacher, occasionally he would say, Hewitt, out of here. My English teacher, I had a substitute for most of the whole year. And, she just despised me because I would challenge the norm. I don't fit in the box. And I view most humans as part of a herd. And the worst possible insult you could ever say to me is, I know someone just like you, or you're normal, or you're typical. I pride myself in being unique and different. And, I even so much that I say I walk the tightrope of insanity. My goals are so audacious and so out of this world that, for example, when I started Jackson Hewitt, we had 6 offices and Block had 9,000. And I told my investors, our goal is to have 9,001 offices. We had 6, so we needed to grow by 8,995 offices. That borders on lunacy. That's totally unrealistic. Well, I never got to 9,000, but I got to 6,000 and became a $1 billion company. So I do walk that tightrope, that balance beam of insanity.
Yeah, certainly. It's the importance of like certainty with delusion, essentially. What have you found to ensure that like delusion becomes a reality? What I'm processing is that in my experience of, founding software companies or, investments within, real estate or like oil and gas, is that bigger numbers always sound more exciting, but are, certainly more difficult to do. But anyone can just constantly make up, a bigger number, right? Just similar to like the good or great or I'm amazing. Like we could just say those things, but the difference between 6,000 and 9,000 is a wide range. The difference between 6 and 6,000 is also. So at some point I've seen within different circles, individuals just put big numbers, on their goal sheet to see how, it might come to be. I've really found through books like 10X is easier than 2X, like having some of those drastically, higher goals is beneficial because you're thinking and operating differently. At some point, you're also just picking a number out of the hat. I want to help a billion trillion people type thing. And it's not actually like serving. So how do you keep that compression between kind of the, looniness, if you will, and the delusion, but also the practicalness of, doing that? Is that just like taking that elephant and like breaking it down into like bite-sized pieces, or what does that, I would say, look like and feel like? Because you'll experience both throughout that process, right? Different feelings and different, actions and ways to go. about it.
Yeah, in our planning, every year we get our executives together and we do planning. And we set a 5-year goal. Mm-hmm. And then everyone's there in the room and they chip in. And it might be, let's say in our first year, I mean, we're going to go to 9,000. We're going to have, so we need to have in 5 years, we need to have 1,000. So then we break it. So then we go back, okay, what do we need to do in 3 years? Okay, we need to have 500. Okay, what do we need to do in 1 year? Well, we need 100. And then everyone in the room, the marketing director, the franchise development salesperson, the HR training department, everyone knows. And we discuss that year and whether it's feasible. And a couple of things happen. We generally go with a consensus. It's not my number. So everyone has a say. So if this year is going to be 100, some people are going to say we're going to have 40, and some people are going to say we're going to have 200. Mm-hmm. And everyone gets their say, and they see that it's not a democracy, but it's a discussion where mm-hmm. we end in a middle number, and everyone knows each other. Okay, well, if we're going to have 100 new offices, we're going to need 60 new franchises, and we're going to have to train then 130 people. And everyone knows in that room whether we can train 130 people or not. But the director of training has to put in their budget the amount of staff they need to have, the number of trainings they need to have, and the resources in terms of hotel rooms and books and supplies. And so everyone knows those numbers. And the only way you get buy-in is if you have a say. If someone dictates to you, we're going to do 100 offices this year, you have no buy-in and no belief. So it comes to as a common goal, and people pitch in and join together to make it.
Certainly. As then, because you were CEO in these situations?
I've been CEO for 42 years.
Yep. Yeah. How then was that you guiding the conversation, right? And saying, okay, so you said 40, do you believe it's only 40, or could it be more like 45? Were you encouraging along the way, or from the plan, you were kind of making that final decision? Or I've seen other, individuals in, CEO roles to say, hey, what do you think we should do? And just kind of let the team of sorts decide, as long as it falls in lines with the intentions. What have you found the best approach to be as a CEO to have those sort of alignment and conversations?
Yeah. In each case, I had to be careful not to speak up. And so we'd always have to have a facilitator. And while I believe that if you and I think the same, one of us is useless, you're always going to have your yes people. So if I would say a number there, out of my 30 people, there'd be 5 of them that would be their number. So I couldn't say a number, right?
Yeah.
So I would allow the conversation to ebb and flow, and eventually I might have to say, if it went on too long and it was between 50 and 70, I might just pick a number and say, okay, that's enough. We'll start with 60. We'll start with 60, and then enough conversation. But the only time I would get involved in, and as little as possible, would be the final number. Yeah, after everyone said their number, then there'd be discussion. And then if they couldn't agree, then I would intercede.
Yeah, certainly. One thought that came to be, and sort of, you mentioned kind of out of the box, there's another expression called pushing the envelope, right? I've had this thought of it's often to push the envelope, but to your point, there's also an opportunity to create a new envelope entirely. So how have you stayed, out of the box as other people are focused on, pushing the envelope, or, they're kind of stuck in, the box, if you will?
I've just, there's something Kathy Lee Gifford wrote a book about, and there was a chapter in the book called Age of Bliss. And it says that until you're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, you think you can do anything. And then everyone tells you, no, you can't be Superman. You can't be Batwoman. You can't be president of the United States. You can't be an astronaut. And even your parents and teachers, they beat you down. And I realized that I realized about 20 years ago when I heard her talking on the radio about that everyone needs to get back to that age of bliss. I realized they had never beat me out of it. So I've always thought could do anything. And I've always had this confidence that when I was a kid, it was cocky because I wasn't proven. But now I'm proven. It's back to confidence. I've always had this self-confidence that there were no limitations.
Yeah, certainly. Talk to me what that's like. And I'll give two examples. One, I've seen how like men can sometimes be around and watch like football per se, right? They watch the NFL and they're like, oh man, like if I was in there, like I could have, caught that pass or something like that, right? Or the same thing maybe in like the gym and they're, oh, hey, like I totally like lift that weight, like, let me do it. But they don't have that experience and it's like a delusional ego, but they have the confidence that they believe that they can do it. So belief is a powerful way to enact and transform and to go after something, right? Because without belief in those moments of just uncertainty, it might not, get you over the fence. So is there a balance with that? Is that just, a trial period to say, oh, I'm going to do this weight because I can do it and I believe and have that level of certainty. And then when you don't, it's then great. This gives me a good opportunity to then learn and try and be, because again, I've just found this like interesting, maybe dance of absolute certainty. I can definitely do this, but also recognizing that there just might be ego with that. So is it a balance, a dance, or how do you keep it definite or do you not keep it maybe definite with the certainty that you have?
Well, there's a couple ways to think of it. Number one is if I could have been anything, it would have been first baseman in the New York Yankees.
Okay.
But and when I was a kid, I loved Mickey Mantle, and he was a switch hitter. So in Little League, I played switch hit. I batted left and right both because Mickey Mantle did. He was my hero. Yeah. But soon I realized that the only way I could do that was with way too much work. Yeah. That I was not willing to put in the work to try to be the first baseman of the New York Yankees. I was pretty good at baseball, but I would have to put in thousands of hours every year, and I wasn't willing to do it. And so I've come to a spot in my life over the last 30 years that I only do what I'm great at. So I gave up golf, right? And I switched and I play tennis because I'm great at tennis. Yeah. And so I only do the things I'm good at. And when I hire, you need to know your weaknesses. So Peter Drucker, one of my favorite business authors, said, people with great strengths have great weaknesses. And so I believe I have been blessed with great strengths. It's proven, but therefore I have great weaknesses. The more strengths you have, the more weaknesses you have. And so some of my weaknesses are, for example, I'm zero detail. I'm zero. So when I look to hire, when I start a company, I'm looking for people that are good at detail. I don't want to hire someone that's good at the same things I am. My first hires are people that offset my weaknesses. And so one of my weaknesses is I'm not a great communicator. And although I do a great job, I think, of getting people to buy into my dream. I have a fairly accurate dream and I get people to buy in. I get my investors and franchisees and employees and customers and vendors. I get people to buy in. But if you and I are friends then I'm not the greatest communicator. I'm below average in those kind of one-on-one. And so I realized that and I actually I'm an introvert, even though I act extroverted to be successful in business. I love being around extroverts because I can ask them a question. They do all the talking.
Yeah, certainly. You've had, decades of experience and opportunities to learn, strengths and weaknesses. Have you found that there's been like tests or assessments that have kind of given you that? Or, for someone who's maybe like just out of college or like, in the midst of their career, they could maybe have an understanding of their strengths and weaknesses. I've certainly found how I found mine, but I'm curious from your perspective, how you would recommend, finding them and then owning them, to your point.
Yeah, most people can't own them. Most people are reluctant to own their weaknesses, and which is a huge drawback to the potential of the results they can obtain in their life. I learned a long time ago that my job is to have the best system in my industry. And I've been doing that for 55 years. We've always had the best system. To have the best system, it has to be improving. no system that worked 10 years ago is going to be working effectively today. You have to adjust, and to adjust. So you have to improve. To improve, you have to change. And it's much more difficult to improve if no one tells you what you're doing wrong. And the beauty of franchising is that they have no problem in telling what you're doing wrong. No one wants to give a CEO, no employee likes to come to my office and give me bad news. People don't like to give CEOs because it's like, kill the messenger, right? But franchisees have no problem complaining about everything and anything. So part of that is to embrace criticism and be comfortable knowing you have to know every year that you're going to have to improve. You're going to have to change. And that's why, as I said earlier, our mission statement is having fun, improving lives.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point from both the franchise and the embracing criticism aspect. I've seen that, I used to have a franchise business, and also in terms of like embracing, criticism, how does that then work with, or what do you think that works with individuals as they're applying to, jobs or like interviewing, as well as entrepreneurs? Do you think those are different and they should, look to like elevate or delegate, some of those tasks? As an entrepreneur, like I would say, yes, hey, these are my weaknesses. I might be able to need to do the hard work first to see, how it works, right? And then, delegate that to someone else so I can focus on my strengths. In someone who's in more of a, corporate sort of structured environment, if the job description is 80% of what they're amazing at and 20% of, their weakness, like how would you recommend them like navigate, or is that a conversation they have with kind of their manager, or what would you think that, looks like or feels like too?
Well, as far as an interview process to be hired, I found that people are always, they're always best when they're on their first date or an interview.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one tells me anything really bad about themselves interview. And so I'm not always right. I'm only right about 2/3 of the time when I hire someone. It's hard to peel away the onion and get to the real person. And so that's a very, very difficult process. But another point though is that I learned a long time ago 2 things about doing work that don't like or I'm not good at. For example, cooking. I don't cook. I don't bake? No, I do nothing. I never, not only have I turned on the oven, I haven't turned on a burner on top of the oven in 40 years.
Yeah.
So what I learned is not only that my time is worth thousands of dollars an hour. I built 2 companies worth $1.5 billion with less than investment of less than 15 million. So $15 million went to $1.5 billion value. So I've created over $1 billion of equity for my stockholders, and my time is worth thousands of dollars an hour. So not only is it crazy for me to go mow the lawn for an hour, especially if I can hire someone at $20 an hour to mow the lawn, or 30 or 40, right? But what I also learned is that if I take the time to go do something I don't like mow the lawn or try to clean the house or things that I don't like to do, then I'm less effective during the 50 or 60 hours a week I work each week because I'm tired from doing those other tasks. So I don't do anything that I can have someone else do. I have maid service, I have lawn service, I have pool cleaners, I have everything. I eat out every night, every lunch. I don't do things that are not a good use of my time that I don't enjoy. I mean, if you enjoyed it, that'd be different, right? Some people love cooking and that relaxes them and they're more effective in other times because they love it. But I don't do things I don't love and I'm not good at.
What does that look like for an entrepreneur, like for these businesses that you created? Like, I guess what has been the genesis story? Was it, starting with yourself, $0, ended up finding, some capital or, what have you? Because I'd be curious to understand what that story is like, to eventually get into that more. Because certainly for the entrepreneurs, they're thinking, great, yeah, I'll only do my strengths. But what has that been, for you with your origin stories for these, variety of companies you've founded?
Yeah, you can't always do that, right? I mean, you sometimes you start from square one, right? Let's say you're in high school, right, or college. I mean, you have no money. And actually, when I worked for H&R Block for 12 years, and when I left, I was running 250 offices, and so I was making pretty good money and high up in management. There's only 35 in the people in the country running 250 offices or more. And so I was in high management, making good money, and then I stepped into self-employment. And so you can't afford day one to hire everyone. In fact, when we bought Mel Jackson, the forerunner of Jackson Hewitt, back in 1982, we raised $129,000. And my investment was $25,000 that I borrowed on credit cards.
Yeah.
So, and people say, well, that's crazy, right? And I was paying 18 or 24% on credit cards. Well, the 25,000 became worth $10 million. So over 15 years, I might have paid 60,000 in interest, but it turned into $10 million. So it's you have to put things in perspective. So yeah, we started on a shoestring and ended up with $1 billion company.
Yeah. It's to say, like, what are you going after with those expenses and those risks? And I've really found it's like defining what that risk is, right? And a calculated risk to then say, for the money that's invested and the realistic potential of what it could be, as well as the unrealistic potential of what it can be, those would then, dictate into what's worth the, investment, as well as what you're, going after. One thing I've been really focused on recently is not just like what you're going after, but the tempo of it, right? So similar to your earlier point of like, hey, we could either do like a couple stores a year sort of thing, or it's, how do we do maybe like 100 this year or 50? And then in order by doing that, right, there's a different tempo that you need to do for kind of daily tasks than there would be if you were doing less. And more isn't always the answer, but it's aligning what, the end goal is into then some of the more, daily or quarterly, sort of metrics to kind of chip away at the block to, accomplish some of those things for your intentions. And then I'm sure you've had this experience too, where, 2 + 2 sometimes equals 7 within business. And I mean that to say you have the intention of, a certain, revenue number of customers or things like that, but randomly you meet someone at lunch and then boom, there's 200 more customers because of a strategic partnership. Like that wasn't planned and isn't a rep that you could have, but it certainly happened because you're doing the right work and, being what some define as like luck, right? Simply because you're putting yourself out there more with the tempo and with the intention, with also, to your point, a really great attitude as well.
Yeah, some great entrepreneurs said, once the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
And I think you need to keep all doors open and continue to meet people and explore all kinds of opportunities. You need to keep the pulse of what's going on in the world around you, and your industry and your company.
Yeah. One thing I found in my book, which is just it's an aggregator of like the 40 books that you would get on your path to becoming, a millionaire or like successful business owner, is the idea within a section I have of like luck itself. And it's so true of it's just like belief. If you have absolute certainty that you are lucky and that it will work, it certainly will. Probably not in the timeline that you think, because unexpected things happen for either better or potentially a longer learning opportunity. But it's definitely the intention of having that deliberate, intentional, this will happen with absolute certainty, and then letting things unfold with it.
Exactly. They got to kill me to stop me. And I set my goals, and I've never met a human being that didn't run into significant adversity. You're going to face adversity, and you don't know when it's going to happen. Murphy's Law is the worst thing that's going to happen is going to happen at the worst time. So stuff is going to happen. You can be certain. God doesn't put anyone here to escape. All of us face adversity. But just like you, I'm unstoppable.
Yeah, absolutely. I am in Austin, Texas. I went to Onnit Gym, which is nationally known, it seems, and the Onnit brand. And there was nothing on the blackboard yesterday. Normally there's exercises and reps, that people should do if they're, group fitness trainings. But there was a quote essentially that suffering is inevitable. Take the offensive. And it really spoke to me yesterday of like, yeah, like it's going to be challenging. Like there's not such thing as like an easy life. It's just choosing your hard, right? Whether it be like with discipline or with, the easy thing of age old, like watch Netflix sort of thing, but then you don't have the life that you truly desire, but also connecting back to some of the things you were talking about. It's like being your true, as I interpret it and think about it, being your true authentic self with the skills, talents, and abilities and resources that you have to produce the best outcome, right? So how do you produce the best? And that could be more than what you're capable of, but it's going to grow you and give you a different mindset shift to understand how to get to do the best, right? Maybe it's industry standard or something like that you currently don't, have that maybe capacity or resources or something, but that ability to get to that, current threshold, almost like the 4-minute mile. At one point, that was not possible, but with the intention and, focus on it, someone was able to achieve it because of their focus and a number of different things, for sure.
It's funny that you know about the 4-minute mile because they broke it before you were born. But I lived it. I lived it back in the 50s and 60s.
Sure.
They said no one was ever going to do it.
It's
fascinating. Now high schoolers do it.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how. So I mean, my parents are in their early 70s, so I've heard the number of things of like the punch cards within computers and systems and paperwork galore and floppy disks and all that, right? And even within the fitness world today, I know individuals who are like, hey, let's like run across the state of Texas and do, century marathons, right? And it's fascinating how the human mind, again, to my earlier point, like has the capacity of like, oh, I'm going to run 1,000,000 trillion. Like you can't tangibly like own that and understand that, but you can by taking, steps to it. So at some point, it's really just what's the goal, having the tenacity to do so, having a plan or, I think a plan is important, but at the very least, just the intention on being absolutely certain that, you will find a way or make a way. I wrote a blog post about a fish climbing a tree, where if you see a fish climbing a tree, you'll not be able to unsee it. And a fish climbing a tree will find a way or make a way because they have the utter belief that it's absolutely, will happen. And they have the tools, resources, knowledge, skills, ability to make it happen. And if at some point they get wavering on either of them, it's then an opportunity for growth. And it's been a cool reflection for me, at least, to be like, yeah, like I identify as a fish climbing a tree, right? You talk about uniqueness. That's my uniqueness and how I operate. One thing I found with entrepreneurs is that, I'm an entrepreneurial type person as well as an entrepreneur. And I've seen people in companies be entrepreneurial, right? Sometimes called entrepreneurs, right? Can you you had this interesting question of, can anyone or everyone like be an entrepreneur? I'm curious on your thoughts, perspective, and experience on that.
Well, I have to say I'm more experienced than almost any human being you've ever met on that topic.
You bet.
Because I brought in 5,200 franchisees and 5,200 new franchisees into my companies. And many of them had partners. So think of it as 7,000 or 8,000 families. And what I learned is that about 70% of the population wants to be an entrepreneur, but only half of them, or less than half of them, somewhere between a third and a half of them, can be an entrepreneur. That they don't have the risk tolerance, or they don't have the get up and go. There's no boss there to tell them they have to be at work at 8:00 in the morning, or they have to stay to 7:00 at night. And some of them don't have the resources. When they hit that adversity that you and I just discussed, that they don't have any resources, fallback. There's no safety net. And so they just fall and give up. So yeah, it's half the people that want to be entrepreneurs should never be an entrepreneur.
How do you evaluate? How have you seen people know that they should or shouldn't be? Is it their level of grit, their ability to make the commitments to themselves, their belief? Like, is there something or some things for someone to kind of be, hey, I should continue to explore this? There's a difference between interest and execution, right?
Right. What I've seen is most of the people that shouldn't be entrepreneurs, they don't start because of the risk. And, I can't leave my job. And, if I don't have my job, I can't. So most of the people, so that takes it down from 70% that want to be entrepreneurs to about 40%. That because most or a good share of the people are just too timid to take that. And the remainder, they go for it, and they fail with it typically within a 1 to 3 years, and mostly within a year. It's clear to us, and if not to them, within a year, that they just can't make it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that falls in line with like SBA type statistics and things like that. It reminds or is kind of a reference to another question of like, how do you overcome like obstacles or barriers in your life? One thing I found of being an entrepreneur of, is it failed companies or is it just learning opportunities, right? And experiences, but it's the intention of not being tied to the outcome has really like helped me personally. So it's, hey, I'm writing a book. I'm going to write an hour a day. And, the days that I do, those are a success, right? Because they move the ball down the field. The days that I happen not to are the days that, those are failures and why did that happen, right? And continue going. I've been in seasons where I've just been so focused on this is going to be, that $1 billion company. And then it's like, great, what did you do today to move the ball down the field? And it's like, well, I thought about it for 2 hours or, I made a business plan and it's like, talk to 10 people, right? A day or those sort of metrics, right? That like actually move the ball down the field as people are going through, that 1 to 3 year sort of entrepreneurial journey as they're just learning everything there is about business. And I've also found you learn a lot about life too and yourself because it's the most difficult thing of sorts that you can do because there's so many factors and it's a true extension of yourself. How have you found to like overcome the barriers in your life, like as an entrepreneur, as an individual, or family individual, or holistically?
Well, first of all, if someone's confused as to whether they can do it, then I often offer the people a internship. Come and try it. Work with us on part-time or weekends, or see. We'll tell you soon whether you can do it.
Yeah.
But I overcome adversity in every which way. Right? I'm unstoppable. The difference between a winner and a loser is the loser gives up at some point. And I'm always thinking I'm a chess player since I was 8 or 9 years old. And if they do that, I'm going to do this. If this happens, I'm going to do that, and so forth. So I think strategically and prepared for virtually anything that can happen. Certainly anything normal that can happen. And sometimes there's abnormal, but I always react not on what if it hadn't happened, but this is where we are. What do we got to do? What do we have to do to, as you said, move the ball forward? We always have to be going forward. And so I always start with, okay, disaster happened or this happened. Okay, this is where we are. Let's circle the wagons. And now what do we have to do to get back on track and get back moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And get back to move forward, not just get back to, huddle and talk, but, navigate, iterate, take steps in different directions. Absolutely. And that's the key to moving forward. In the football analogy, it's how you get the ball, down the field is by, moving it forward. So this has been incredible. It's given me a lot of insight from my own experience, as well as, where I'm going and intending for, the future. The intention of this podcast is, the investors, guide to joy. And so as they're investing in, themselves or their, businesses or maybe doing M&A deals, right? This guide has then the intention to say, what is your kind of like mark on it, right? So what would you leave in the guide as like a quote, a model, a motto or intention that you've really found through, your life and your experience that someone should, absolutely know?
My standard advice to every human being is find something you love to do, work hard, persevere. Life's too short. If you're on Monday morning, if you're going to work and not looking forward to it, you're going to the wrong place. And everything worthwhile requires hard work. And perseverance is the number one quality of success.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, that's great insight. And I've really found that by me doing a lot of, different things that I've done, I can absolutely resonate with that. And then for the individuals who maybe not resonate with that, I would argue to say like they just haven't done enough yet to really then know, what perseverance is and feels like and what, hard work is and feels like. And from my perspective, it's not to say like hard work equals success. And so it's understanding like what are the things that, move the ball down the field, not just, hey, I worked 1,000 million hours, right? Because otherwise like you yourself would be burnt out to the nth degree, getting these number of stores. But I would, think as a CEO, it's taking a step back, getting great people that are very intelligent, that are aligned with your culture with you, and then locking arms and then going down it, right? So elevating, delegating, and intentional on where you're going. So a thought just came to mind. I just wanted to share that for someone who might be a different path. But John, really appreciate you coming on, sharing your experience, and really enjoyed our time together today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah,
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks for joining the Investor's Guide to Joy today, where we aim to change your life by 1 degree in each episode. These days, I'm raising funds for oil and gas syndications, a luxury short-term rental super property syndication, which is a lot of fun, and managed by Luxury Desert Escapes. I also help people get what they want through finance, mindset, and action to help them eliminate worry, build better habits, create their life, and live their life. If any of these things seem of interest to you or you just want to chat, connect with me. Let's chat more. Until we see you again.